listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. I'm Cynthia, the pharmacist, and today you'll get your questions answered and your curiosity cured. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about calcium and how good it is for your bones. I've had lots of questions at work lately about calcium and how much is needed, what it actually does, why the doctor just kind of says, hey, go take some calcium and doesn't give you a whole lot more information than that. So if the doctor's not giving you a whole lot of information, then usually they come to me and ask me questions to get some more details. Calcium is a natural element. We all know that our teeth and our bones are made strong by calcium. And for most active, healthy adults, your recommended calcium daily dose is 1,000 milligrams. For some people who are reaching the older end of the scale, so if you're a female approaching 50, then your daily recommended dose of calcium may be a little higher, maybe pushing 12 or 1,300 milligrams a day. So 1,000 milligrams, that's easy. That's going to be easy for us to divide for this conversation. The downside to the calcium is that your body can only absorb about 500 milligrams of elemental calcium from whatever goes in your stomach at one time. So you don't want to just pound all your calcium supplement all at one time and be like, okay, I got my calcium for the day. Because when your body reaches that 500 max, it says, all my boats are full, I don't have any more space, and then everything else gets sent out the exit and gets unused. So that makes it very important for you to split your calcium up throughout the day. Now that's easy if you're getting a lot of calcium from your diet because you're going to be eating calcium-rich foods. Yes, with D, vitamin D helps with the calcium absorption. So if you are low on D, which most of the modern world tends to be deficient on vitamin D because most of our jobs and our hobbies keep us inside and not outside in the sun. Our skin can synthesize vitamin D when it's exposed to UV light, but very few of modern world jobs are actually outside working in the sun for multiple hours. So to get all of the vitamin D that you would need, you have to be outside for more than just a little bit. But anytime outside to have your body synthesize its own natural vitamin D is better than none at all. So the vitamin D is very important for that. Calcium supplements come two ways if you're going to buy them over the counter. One is calcium carbonate, and it is in the commercial product Caltrate. Caltrate is calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is also what is in your tablet form antacids because calcium carbonate is basic. So when you add a base to the acid in your stomach, it neutralizes and brings everything back to the middle. So if you are someone that suffers with heartburn and you take Tums a lot, then those Tums are giving you some amount of calcium as a supplement. Just an interesting tidbit. Caltrate is calcium carbonate. It's more basic, so it requires the extra acid in your stomach to be absorbed. Because calcium in general requires acid to be absorbed into your body. So if you have calcium stuck in a tablet that's a base, then the only way to get that calcium out of there is to add an acid to it. So that's why it goes in your stomach and your stomach can absorb it. The other form of calcium that you can get over the counter, the trade name is Citracal, and that's calcium citrate. And calcium citrate is naturally acidic. So it's calcium stuck in a tablet in an acid form, so it doesn't require extra acid in your stomach to be absorbed. So why does that make a difference? For people who might have had gastric bypass, their stomach has been shrunk, so they have less acid pumps in their stomach to make acid. So to take a naturally acidic form of calcium in the Citracal is going to absorb better in their body. For people who suffer with acid reflux, a naturally acidic form of calcium in citrical is going to irritate the stomach. So reflux, stomach ulcers, you're not going to want a naturally acidic form of calcium. The naturally basic form of calcium, which is the caltrate, that is going to require acid in your stomach. So if you have normal acid, it's going to work fine. Usually it's recommended to be taken after a meal. So you've put food in your stomach and your acid gears up to digest all that food, and then you can stick that calcium in there and it'll get absorbed more efficiently. Or they recommend, if you're going to take your vitamins first thing in the morning before you eat breakfast, is to take the caltrate with an acidic juice. So orange juice, grapefruit juice, some kind of fruit juice that would be highly acidic to be able to get that calcium out of that tablet for you to absorb. So when you're reading the calcium supplement labels, it's going to say calcium carbonate 600 milligrams. And then somewhere in parentheses, it's going to say approximately 230 milligrams elemental calcium. And elemental calcium is the only form of calcium that your body can use. So back to my statement where your body can only absorb 500 milligrams of calcium, that's elemental calcium. So if it's 600 milligrams of calcium carbonate, but only 200 and something of elemental calcium, then to get to that maximum 500, you got to take more than one tablet. So that's tricky. And doctors don't tell you that. And the label doesn't really tell you that either, because usually it just says take one tablet a day as your supplement. But if you're really needing to get to your maximum daily dose of calcium for bone health and teeth health and all of those things, then you kind of have to use your brain and use the logic to say you're going to read that elemental calcium line. So usually your calcium-rich foods, like your dairy foods, are going to give you about 250 to 300 milligrams of elemental calcium per serving. So like a serving of cheese or a serving of milk, whatever that serving is on the package, and that's going to give you about 25% of your daily recommended dose. Then I actually looked up a list, because there's all kinds of foods that give you calcium in smaller amounts, especially for people who may try to avoid dairy for GI upset reasons or just food ethical reasons if you choose to be vegan or anything like that. So dairy products may not be a part of your diet on a regular basis. So here's my list. White beans. White beans give you calcium. Black-eyed peas give you calcium. That sounds good to this southern girl. Black-eyed peas, I could do that. Sardines have a really high concentration of calcium. I think it's because, like, it's a little bitty fish and you get all the bones inside too, because bones are calcium. Not a whole lot of things that we actually eat the bones of, but that would be one thing you did. Dried figs, bok choy, molasses has a significant amount of calcium in it. Kale, turnip greens. I don't do greens. I know I'm a southern girl, don't do greens. Almonds, oranges actually give you a decent amount of calcium. And then sesame seeds. So there's some other things that can be added to your diet that can give you calcium. The range is somewhere between 6 and 20% of your daily dose. And then there are some foods at the store that are fortified with calcium. And some people don't like eating processed foods or boxed foods as much, and that's understandable. And if that's the case, if you're eating more fresh and natural foods, then you're probably getting a decent amount of calcium from the fresh things that you eat. But if you, especially if you're trying to feed kids, and most of Americans eat boxed foods as it is, and so they've learned to be able to fortify certain foods with calcium because we may not get it any other way. So instant oatmeal, Quaker Oats oatmeal packets, that's fortified with calcium. Most of your mainstream orange juices are fortified with calcium. I don't think some of the more natural ones are, like the Simply Orange which is one of the ones I like because it's just like straight up orange juice. But most of your mainstream orange juices are fortified with calcium. Soy products, so soy milk is fortified with calcium, tofu is fortified with calcium, because usually you're eating those things to replace regular milk or regular dairy products, or meat and animal products in your diet, so they fortify those with calcium. And then good old Cheerios are fortified with calcium, so you get some amount of calcium, somewhere around 14% of your daily dose of calcium in those fortified foods if you choose to buy those at the grocery store. So back to the vitamin D. The vitamin D does help your body absorb calcium. In your stomach, it helps your stomach absorb the calcium, and then in your bloodstream, it helps the calcium stay loose and stay individual, so that when your body is ready to use it for your bones, then it's easy for the body to grab and send to where it needs to go instead of having to like take it out of something else. And so that's the fastest way that the calcium can be accessed. So calcium is important. The amount that you get is dependent on what you eat, and then obviously there are supplements that you can take to improve calcium. And I had a really long conversation about this with a lady. She was pretty distraught about her new diagnosis of having osteoporosis in her spine. And she was like, how much calcium can I take? I want to get this fixed really fast. And I'm like, well, it doesn't quite work that way. But if you do what you need to do, then you can at least stop the degradation process of your bones, and so the next time the doctor checks you out, then they don't see any change and you haven't gotten any worse. Because osteoporosis is really hard to actually reverse, especially as you get older. So there's a whole crash course on calcium. So just as a quick summary, calcium, you need it for your bones. For your body to absorb calcium, it requires your stomach to be acidic, which can be a downside for people who have acid reflux or stomach ulcers or any other disease process that may make the acid really uncomfortable in their stomach. And so to fix that, there's a basic form of calcium supplement, and there's an acidic form of calcium supplement. So for people who may have a smaller stomach, like gastric bypass, people who have had that process done, you can take the acidic form, and it doesn't require as much acid in your stomach because it's already acidic by itself. But if you suffer with reflux, then taking the basic form is the best option because it goes in your stomach and counteracts some of that acid that may be overactive. And since your body can only absorb 500 milligrams of elemental calcium at a time, if you're going to get your 1,000 milligrams for your daily recommended dose, then you're going to need to split that up. If you're getting most of your calcium from your diet, that's really easy because you're probably not eating enough of a dairy product to try to get 1,000 milligrams at a time. That would be a lot of dairy. But if you're having to add supplements in a pill form, then you probably have to split it up in a couple of doses to make sure that your body can absorb the maximum amount without wasting a whole lot. So that's one of the things to think about. And then the last thing I mentioned was that because the calcium comes in kind of the calcium citrate, when you're reading supplement labels, you want to make sure that you're reading the fine print where it says elemental calcium to find out how much elemental calcium you're going to get per tablet. So you don't think you're getting more than what your body is actually going to absorb, because again, your body can only use that elemental calcium. It can't use it in the combined form. It's combined to make it easy to pack into a pill. Do you have any specific advice for kids? Kids actually have, the National Institution of Health in the U.S. Actually has a recommended dose for kids. I don't know how young it goes. I think just about everybody over like the age, I don't want to try to pinpoint it because I'm probably going to get it wrong. The 1,000 milligrams is for adults 18 to 50. As kids, I think the cutoff is like 2 years, and I think pediatricians have a little more specific for things for kids under 2 years. In the U.S., we have children's vitamins, even for like infants, that come in liquid that are like in a dropper. They give the calcium and the vitamin D, and it's like the exact amount. I think it gives a majority, that the vitamin supplement gives a majority of the daily dose. One, because for infants, they're getting a lot of milk, so the calcium isn't as high, but the vitamin D is like the max, I think, for kids, because they may not see outside as much, especially if you've got kids with fair skin like mine. We try to be real careful in the sun, but also they're not going to be eating the fortified foods that I listed. Yeah, a multivitamin for a kid should be plenty to give them the vitamin D that they need. And then any extra that they get from playing outside in the sun from natural synthesis is not going to be overkill in any rate. So there's not really anything extra that you would have to do for kids if they're taking a multivitamin like the Flintstones or the gummies or whatever. Yeah, and well, it's hard to probably get a 17-year-old daughter to do much of anything that you want her to. Yeah, and I guess because I'm in the southeast U.S., we get long days, we get hot summers, so we spend a lot of time outside. But again, with fair-skinned kids, we have to be really careful outside, so we try not to get outside when it's too hot or the risk of getting burned is too much. The weather in the UK is completely different. Your sun exposure is completely different. So getting that extra vitamin D from outside, especially as much as you can when winter comes around, can definitely help keep your mood stabilized, because your season affective disorder or SAD, that makes everybody sad in the wintertime because there's not as much sun, comes from a vitamin D deficiency. So people who live in northern latitudes have a much higher risk of that. And so getting the vitamin D in the supplement, getting as much sun exposure during those short daylight hours in the wintertime as much as you can is the best way to try to counteract that. The other thing too is the light, the natural light, not artificial light that electricity technology gives us, but the natural light that stimulates your eyes also helps stimulate the serotonin in your brain that helps improve your mood. That's why antidepressants work so hard to keep your serotonin stable, because that's the one thing during your daylight hours that make your brain feel good and happy and in a good mood and, positive outlook on life and all that stuff. So the lack of vitamin D and the lack of light stimulation can definitely lead to grumpiness and sadness and depression in the wintertime when we're not getting as much light. So obviously calcium and vitamin D, our teeth are made with it, our bones are made with it. So to keep all of those things strong, you're going to need your calcium and you're going to need the vitamin D to support your organs to be able to use that calcium the most efficiently. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for being with me, and I will see y'all later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. The pharmacy is now closed. You can post your questions and comments on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/pharmanswerspod. Or you can email the show at pharmacistanswershere@gmail.com. You can tweet me or message me on Twitter at @SynHendrix. You can find the show notes at pharmacistanswershere.wordpress.com. Pharmacist Answers broadcasts live on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9:02 a.m. Eastern Time on the Periscope app. You can follow me at synhendrix or view in your web browser at periscope.tv/synhendrix. See you next time on the Pharmacist Answers podcast.